really think that was what kind of catalyzed a lot of who I became and who I am now. When I had gotten out, I had used my GI Bill to get a number of degrees and kind of use that unique perspective of military and economic and business to really arrive at implementing drones in a new and novel way about 10, 11 years ago. And so now my team and I are focused on how we can use drones to close food deserts, increase access to medical care, and really improve people's lives in a way that we haven't seen in a lot of the ways that they've been used over the last few decades.
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, Paul Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. In this episode, we're very excited to have Ryan Walsh, founder and CEO of Valqari. Ryan is leading the charge in revolutionizing drone delivery, focusing on perfecting that crucial last inch of delivery. He'll share how Valqari's innovative technology is reshaping logistics, the challenges they've tackled, and what the future holds for drone deliveries. Tune in for a look at how drones are transforming the way we receive packages. Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jumpo.
Before we begin on the in-depth questions, because I do have some, do you mind giving us a quick intro on who Ryan is? What's your expertise, your experiences, and what keeps you busy these days?
Yeah, absolutely. I started my career about 20 or so years ago in special operations. Did a number of tours overseas with the 75th Ranger Regiment. I really think that was what kind of catalyzed a lot of who I became and who I am now. Um, when I had gotten out, I had used my GI Bill to get a number of degrees and kind of use that unique perspective of military and economic and business to really arrive at implementing drones in a new and novel way about 10, 11 years ago. And so now my team and I are focused on how we can use drones to close food deserts, increase access to medical care, and really improve people's lives in a way that we haven't seen in a lot of the ways that they've been used over the last few decades.
Do you think your experience in the army have a direct relation on what made you fall in love or just curious about how drones can actually help make the world a better place?
Yeah, it's actually an old saying, right? Amateurs talk tactics and professionals talk logistics, right? Anybody who's been in the military or done some, real fun cutting edge stuff on the military side of things will tell you logistics is everything. I think Napoleon said it. The logistics is everything for an army, right? Armies march as far as their logistics and supply trains go. So realizing that not just being able to deliver payloads, but to deliver packages and things that people need for life saving and critical care, that was what really drove me into this.
What's the main vision for Valkyrie? Is the hope to focus on drone delivery at the start, or was it other forms of drone use?
We've done a lot of trial and error and a lot of just overall testing and we've broken a lot of drones over the years trying different things, but we started in package delivery to the home, and we really kicked that off in 2017, only to find out very quickly we were a long ways away, right? That's still on the horizon for us. We haven't gotten it yet, right? And so what we realized was we needed to look at how this market was going to evolve and what those first use cases were going to be, and creating a product and a system that would work for those use cases. And so we spent a number of years really doing that to focus predominantly on some medical and other controlled high criticality, low volume type of deliveries. But that's really kind of morphed into a system that can touch almost any industry.
What's the different use cases that you've had for your drone so far?
We've done a lot of really fun things. We delivered food at a golf course, beers and food at a golf course. We also did a really fun pilot with Levy Restaurants and Compass Group over at Purdue University. We're partners with a group out in Guam, Bella Wings, and they do amazing things from ship to shore, shore to ship, intra island, and different inter island types of deliveries. We're working on one that should be announced quite soon in the medical space that I'm really excited about. Um, and we also have a number of other medical applications coming out. That seems to be an area where we're getting a lot of demand, and the team is very excited to focus on. So I would expect to hear a lot more about our medical stuff coming soon.
For those who aren't familiar with the idea of Valqari's perfecting the last inch of the last mile, what does that mean, and how does it actually fit in what you do?
Yeah, so Valkyrie really builds infrastructure for drones, and that really evolved into integrating a whole drone for a process, right? And so a customer will come to us and say, "We have this layout. We're looking to achieve this," and we'll come in with our team and our expertise and say, "Okay, you'll need." Two landing stations, four landing stations, whatever it may be. We'll select the number of drones, and most importantly, the right kind of drones, because we don't necessarily build our own. We work with a number of different providers and airframes, and we're able to integrate those for our customers. And so we're able to build this modular design. So whether you're at a hospital, whether you're at a golf course or a stadium, we're able to put together something that will work for the use case and your customer base, and something that they'd be really excited about. So for us, the modularity and that integration is really the most exciting thing to me, because it allows us to work with so many different customers in so many different ways.
In your experience, what type of industries have actually the biggest need for the technology that you are currently developing?
So what I've come to find is almost every industry is touched by supply chain logistics, last mile customer experience, and customer fulfillment. And so any combination of those are where you're going to find variables, and oftentimes you're going to find where customer pain points are, right, or even employee pain points. And so being able to streamline that process, I like to equate it to telehealth, right? We all know that you can get on a screen just like this, talk to a doctor, say, "Here's my symptoms," but then what? Right? If I can get you that medicine in the next hour straight from the pharmacy, right through a system that provides it to you within a couple dozen minutes, right? You won't have to leave your house. You won't have to, especially if you're feeling ill. How can we make your life easier? How can we schedule errands to be delivered so you don't have to go out and run errands and get food and do all these things that, I mean, really, at the end of the day, nobody likes doing. Nobody likes running errands. So how do we fix that? So
Is the weight a big difference in factor on which industries you can actually serve? Because I would assume that most of the demand right now is in the medical field. One of the biggest reason is that most of the things that they need to be transferred or delivered is not that heavy compared to other industries.
no, you're spot on. That's a brilliant observation, and that's absolutely the case. Medical is a very high criticality, usually with enough price points built in to where it covers these types of operations just due to the nature of medical costing. And so it really is a way for us to streamline the system, and with workforce especially becoming more and more difficult to find in certain specialized positions, if we can provide a way for them to use their personnel for customer and patient care as opposed to you know delivery or running transportation or logistics, that's really what we want to focus on. But what we're finding is everybody can use this, right? Whether it's a small business that's looking to increase delivery to their customers, whether it's different police stations that are looking for providing specific accidents with bleeder kits or Narcan or AED. There's a whole world of things that can be impacted by this technology, and so I really think it's going to be ubiquitous very soon.
With all the different use cases and type of drones out there in the field, there's the racing drones, the drones that are used for agriculture, filming, reconnaissance drones, and many more. Why did you choose to pursue the path of delivery drones?
Just to your last point, right? As you start to get heavier, right? If we talk about a family of four's groceries for a week or a flat screen TV or a microwave, that's not really good for drone delivery. That's still very good for ground delivery. But there are items like Uber Eats, right? If you order a cheeseburger and some fries and a drink, why do we have an entire person in a vehicle burning gas, driving to the place, picking it up, driving it to you? That's more suited for a drone, right? If you have a pharmaceutical prescription that needs to be delivered, that's best suited for a drone. So there is, to your point, a weight limit that really starts to make it less ideal. Now, scale that back, there's some really great solutions in the mid mile. There's a lot of great companies. Mighty Fly is one that comes to mind. Dronomics. These are companies that are solving how do I get something between cities, between transport hubs, and then really where Valqari and many other last mile specialty companies come in is distributing it from those hubs to people's homes, and usually that's in the 20 poundish and under range, although 10 to 15 is probably more likely the range we'll see the most. um, but it really it goes back to a meal for two people falls right in that range. A round of drinks and some food and chips for golfers, right in that range. So that just seems to be kind of what that immediate need hour long window tends to be, is right in that 10 to 15 pound range.
Do you think the biggest issue right now, or the biggest opportunity that many drone companies need to actually put their minds onto, is how you can get more weight actually on the drones?
Not necessarily. There's always a question of that, and that is the limiting factor. But that comes down to two things: physics and batteries. We're never going to be able to beat physics unless we get a new propulsion system. Fingers crossed that we might get some cool stuff soon out of the Pentagon, right? But short of that, I think that we've figured out with propellers that there's prop size, motor size, payload, and overall aircraft size, and all of that plays into how fast, how far, how heavy. On the flip side of that is the battery side, and I'm working with a really exciting company, Soteria Battery Innovation Group, and they've got some really excellent technology for battery safety. But the key here is the more energy you can store in a battery, or the more energy we can get back into that battery through like hybrid engines, things like that, the heavier the payload, the further, the faster, the more, right? And so all of that is really achieved in my eyes through very low weight, energy dense batteries that I'm hoping solid state and a few of these other promising technologies can solve for us very, very soon. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
What other use cases do you hope to have on the future?
I'll be honest, my vision by 2040 is that there is a Valkyrie station with every home, every business, and you'd be able to get what you need right in a window of your house, right at your mailbox. And we would have these built into new construction. I would see this being as ubiquitous as the mailbox, and once you have that density of saturation for the infrastructure, drones really can do anything. I mean, whether it's photography, like many are already doing mapping inspection, but now we can start opening up peer-to-peer delivery networks. We can start opening up different channels of how we can create much more efficient supply chains. We have a habit of consolidating everything into a warehouse and then distributing it back out, when instead we can have more of these peer-to-peer type networks, and all of that's going to be managed just through inventory management and airspace management. And so it really comes down to all the bright minds we have in this industry continuing to do what they're doing. And with the new FAA Reauthorization Act that was passed, implementing those timelines over the next 18 months for drone delivery to really take hold. But I think we are right on the cusp now.
For the clients that you currently have, what are the biggest pain points that they actually have that makes them want to work with a drone delivery company?
So I'll use a golf course for an example. The golfers, the customers, their biggest complaint is I'm going around the course. I might not see the beverage cart for an hour, right? But I want something now. And at the same time, the course can't put more beverage carts out there because the labor and the cost to do that is very expensive. And so we have a very elegant solution that's able to solve that without um, adding a whole lot of extra. Costs and infrastructure and burden. If anything, installing one of our systems is pretty much on par with a lot of current systems that they're using without having to have the labor personnel. In medical, for instance, it comes down to transport, right? Whether it's routine or whether it's on demand stat transport. There's a need for it, and depending on how critical and how fast and how far, there's going to be a cost associated with that. But if you look at drones at scale, the ROI for a delivery by traditional means, right? Our current Uber Eats and ground based delivery vehicles versus drones, it's 22x savings at scale. And our data is supporting a lot of those numbers. We haven't quite hit that far, but I mean, we are seeing orders of magnitude like those numbers in a lot of our early data. And so I'm very excited about where this goes. And I know we're only at the beginning. Technology rarely moves backwards. So I see this just being the worst that this is going to be. And we're just going to start seeing more low cost, high frequency, easy deliveries that help people and patients.
So basically, the main vision for drone delivery is to reduce the manual labor, that instead of you going to a restaurant or someone else picking up your food, you just have a drone do it for you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we kind of taken it for granted in a lot of
Yeah.
other places in our life, right? I want to talk to you. I get on a phone or I send you an email. You could be across the world, right? We've got a Figure and all the great team over there that's got their new humanoid robot, right? And that's going to revolutionize a lot of the housework and things of that nature. And what we've seen while looking at different autonomous solutions is ground-based robots end up having very big difficulty in urban environments, right? Particularly because the people they're trying to help aren't always the greatest, right? They're vandalizing and kicking them over and things. And so that's why I've always thought drones are going to be that critical next step, because if I can get up and over the fray and get back down, I can bypass all of that. And there's no obstacles, no traffic. And we have the technology to seamlessly do this with all of the route planning and UTM and traffic management and weather planning and everything else. So it really seems like a perfect time for these technologies to come together and really create something amazing.
You said that you hope by the time 2040, most of the houses will have these lunch pads or the mini helipads on their houses built in. But when is the technology actually consumer ready to be used?
I truthfully believe a lot of it already is. We've been designing at home single family mailboxes for, oh man, what, 7, 8 years now. A lot of our designs have stayed in the dark just because, the market hasn't been ready and we haven't seen widespread at home delivery yet. I think that's coming and I'm very excited about that in the next few years. But um, what we're seeing now is really kind of the seeds being planted. And what I expect of this is, for instance, you'll see these hubs, right? The Dallas Fort Worth area is a big one. There's a few other ones out there. Michigan is doing amazing things. Grand Forks. But you'll have these little seeds, right? And you'll have like one delivery network that's doing 5 miles around this area, and then they might expand to 10 miles. And then you might have a secondary player over here that's working with these restaurants and pharmacies. And eventually, a lot of these will overlap and there will be standardization, and a lot of the infrastructure and the landing pads and the way they talk to the FAA will all be streamlined into one seamless way of doing it. And I think that's really going to be the key when we see this real adoption in a mainstream kind of way.
What's the current max weight that your drones can carry, and how long can they typically fly?
So we pick our drones specifically for our customer use case, and so the use cases we're doing right now, we have a couple of different airframes. 10 pounds is a very comfortable weight for them. They could go a little bit more, but we try to keep them right at that 10 pounds for predictability. Um, they right now are flying in line of sight with the regulations, although we have a considerable amount of team dedicated towards looking at what the new regulations coming out will be and how we can eventually get to that point. There's great companies out there. I think Drone Express just got their Part 135, right? And they're doing great things in Denver and North Carolina. And so, you're seeing these little seeds get planted around the country that are starting to grow. And that's what's got me most excited. um, and each of those are going to create those use cases and that competition in the market that will eventually to 2040 get us to a point where everybody has this. It's like a cell phone, everybody's using it. But I do think it will take some time for that to occur over this decade.
Every industry has its bumps along the road, especially when you're trying to start something very new. And as people know it, drone industry is one of the newest industry there is. What's the biggest challenges that Valqari has faced?
Man, where to begin? It feels like we're always facing a headwind in some way. Regulations has been a challenge, just because it's created this kind of dam in the industry. And so behind this, you have a lot of pressure. And some of the companies that are kind of getting pushed up against that wall have broken. We've seen a couple of really phenomenal teams turn over, and that's heartbreaking for me, to be honest. At the same time, I'm really excited about when that dam breaks in the next, couple weeks, months, year. And we're going to see a whole mess of new business models and technology and airframes and different ways of doing things that I think is going to be just so exciting and revolutionary. At the same time, uh, we've got to be cautious, right? We're seeing in Ukraine that these things can be very, very dangerous. At the end of the day, they still are tools that can be manipulated in bad actor ways. And so, just as much as happening on the counter UAS side. And so, to me, just how dynamic this industry is great, but it's also created a lot of friction, right? You got a lot of these small companies carving out their specific areas, and sometimes they make a pivot, and sometimes you end up in a similar area, right? And guys that were your friends may be your enemies soon, and guys that are your enemies may be your friends soon. And this industry does have a bit more of a cutthroat angle to it than I would say I've experienced in the past. But what we really are facing is mostly on the government and regulatory side.
So the regulations is always changing because it is a new technology. Yeah, is that the case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're seeing it just evolving, not
Yeah.
necessarily changing. We're seeing the foundations get laid with each new release of their regulations. I mean, they've been coming out for close to 10 years now, and each one gets us a step closer, but we're not quite there yet.
No, I'm sure there's a lot of other drone delivery companies out there. What makes Valkyrie actually unique?
Two things. One, we've been at this a long time, and that's really evidenced by our patent portfolio. We've got 34 individually granted patents covering a number of different inventions that we've done over the years. So we've been consistently on the cutting edge of the research and development, the product development, and not to say we've done all of it, but I do feel we've come up with a pretty key piece of this industry and kind of carved that out as our territory. So I'm happy about that. But what I would say a new and more exciting competitive advantage we have is because of my background in special operations and the connections that's allowed me to forge over the years. We've been really lucky in the talent lately. We've brought on a lot of great guys from um, some really, really prestigious groups and units that have just phenomenal training, phenomenal character, and have really brought a ton to the table for Valqari. Other drone companies don't necessarily have those same connections and communities around them, and so I think that's something that we've kind of been able to edge out and just the recent time frame.
As you said, most of the guys that you have hired are good people. How important is having a team member that actually is, overall a good character?
I would say it's probably one of the single most important things, and I've learned that the hard way. Oftentimes you want to believe people's best intentions, and you want to build a team based on the culture you're looking for. And every time you add somebody, especially in that first 15, it can be very, very disastrous if it's a wrong fit. And I really have learned to re-emphasize the hire fast fire slow, or hire slow fire fast mentality, because it can, right. We've had teams that have been not good culture fits, right? And sometimes that will permeate across an entire group within the company, right? You'll have to let an entire team go at times because things have just gotten so off where you need to be. And oftentimes I've found if you boil it down, whatever it may be, it ends up being a character issue, right? Ethical and discipline and all of those things, integrity, those are all character issues.
Most of the things that we've talked about the hope you have for the future is by 2040. So it's not that short of a time frame. What's your hope by at least 2030? What things do you think needs to happen within the drone industry to make it so that what your hope for 2040 would actually be feasible?
I think that excuse me, the new regulations especially are really all that's left. I've seen so many amazing pieces of technology. I've seen so many just brilliant people working on this stuff. um, I've seen the end solution many, many times by many companies at this point. And so, to me, there's not really a technological barrier or an execution barrier. Bless you. It's more so just the dam needs to break at this point. And I think this FAA reauthorization act is what's going to really be that dam breaking for us.
I think you mentioned earlier that this industry is very cutthroat. Do you mind telling us why it is, especially compared to other ones?
Yeah, I mean, like anything else, right? We saw it in crypto and Web3, and we're seeing it in AI now. It's just one of those, whenever you have a hot new industry, it attracts everybody, good and bad. And for the longest time, I would say the drone industry was kind of 85% vaporware. And I no longer think that's the right percentage. I think it's gone down tremendously. I think the vaporware companies have really burned themselves out and just couldn't re raise. And we're kind of subject to the same pains everybody else. But when the tide goes out, you see who's got your shorts on, right? And so, for us, it was kind of seeing this path and riding it the right way, not getting too big, not kind of cutting it too thin, but just doing everything we could to make sure that we were positioned properly for when it would come. And so, to me, these regulations are the last piece. I can't see anything else other than customer adoption, but everybody we've seen so far is just waiting on these regulations. And once it's here, they're going to be ordering by drones. I'm certain of it.
How does the infrastructure actually look like? Let's say I want to order something. What would it look like from A to where it starts, where they get the product from, and then how it gets delivered to me? The whole
Sure. And
process.
if you go on to Valqari.com or one of our LinkedIn pages, for instance, you should be able to see the system. It's a rather large, 7.5 feet tall, right? It's taller, so I can't grab it. It's designed to be above the human canopy, right? And that was the first thing we learned with our mailboxes was at a mailbox height, right? 48 inches above the curb, U.S. Postal Code regulatory. It's far too close to the ground. I mean, that's face height for the blades for me, right? And so you can imagine kids and animals and things are able to get to that. And so this thing is 7.5 feet tall for that exact reason. We don't want the drone ever coming down to the human canopy for safety purposes. And we don't want anybody to accidentally have to, put their arm up and be in danger. So it's very difficult unless you can make an NBA team to get up on this thing. Um, it's got six lockers in the front, and we have an optional touchscreen for certain applications. But the idea being, you can go on an app on your phone or on that touchscreen, place an order using whichever program. Right, you can certain instances it's a Valqari screen. Other times with our customer, we'll just have their screen on there. But you'll place your order, and then drone will then have that package come out from the kitchen or the hospital or wherever you're waiting on it from. It'll go into one of those lockers and get sorted into a sorting mechanism, which then brings it up to the drone. The drone then actually centers it right at the elevator, so it's perfectly aligned for the drone. That's really important for center of gravity. And then the drone will take off after it gets FAA approval. It'll fly, depending on the route you plan or the pilot's planning, or what if you want to fly straight as the crow flies. But you fly to that receiving point. Once it gets there, it goes through a verification and authentication. It says, I'm drone 123. I've got this package. I deliver at this time to this box. And so there's a full chain of custody, which is really important if you're delivering pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, alcohol, cannabis, any type of controlled stuff. And so then everybody would get a notification, and whoever the recipient is would come out, wave their phone, press a button, their locker opens, and everything's good to go. And they only get access to their locker. So it's a very controlled and secure system.
So it's actually they have a sorting mechanism inside of the lockers itself.
Yeah. Yep. Sure does.
That's great. I mean, I'm imagining this instead of just having one locker for each household. You can share some with your neighbors.
That's exactly it. And so we can have, you have six houses in a townhouse, and we can have one locker assigned to each one,
Yeah,
or it can be a first come, first serve, and, just polite customer courtesy,
yeah,
neighborly courtesy. You don't keep it in there for longer than an hour, right?
fantastic. And is there anything that you've, in the past 5 years, any innovations that you saw in the drone industry that actually made you say, wow?
There was a group out of MIT using well, I'm going to totally butcher the name, Brown Byfield effect, if I'm not mistaken, where they were using uh, the difference in the electrical photons, or the electrons between a positively charged and a negatively charged wire on this more or less balsa wood looking glider. And they were able to keep that thing in the air using next to no power. And it was pretty fascinating. Um, I was very, very impressed by that. I think there's some other groups. Blue Flight, for instance, is a drone company that has ducted uh, vectoring, right, more or less with their drones, and so they don't have that open prop design as much. I think that's a really, really interesting concept. DJI has been putting out some incredible stuff, and although there's some political stuff, and that's not for me to go here or there on, their technological innovations really are unrivaled in this industry for what you get and the value. Especially, they just released their DJI Dock 2, and I think that thing is everywhere last time I looked. Um, there's also been some really exciting advances in the wireless charging. I think that's going to be one of the areas that might be a little bit of uh, almost a little cheat code to get around some of the battery limitations we currently have. So I think all of these coming together are what's going to shape a lot of the future with some of the new technologies that we're going to see in drones over the next 5 years.
Plus, I hope for the industry is that when it becomes mainstream enough, I know that there's 100% chance that the technology will get cheaper just because, not because, technology gets cheaper over time, plus the fact that you get to do it by bulk.
Couldn't agree more. A lot of the economic models for drone delivery are
Yeah.
almost hard to believe because they're so good compared to what we have now.
Yeah. Is the price of the drones currently one of the biggest, you know, blocks of, what actually makes it widespread? Do you think if the drone prices becomes much lower, it's gonna become widespread much easier?
Yeah, and that's just going to be coming with the economies of scale, right? As more
Yeah.
of these are produced in higher quantity and volume, and you got more customer demand, you're going to get better margins
Yeah.
out of that. So I think, yes, yeah, it's a guarantee the price will go
Yeah.
down in these.
And since we're nearing the end of the podcast, do you have any advice on anyone who wants to go into the drone industry?
I would say the drone industry is tough, right? This has been an industry that
Yeah.
really kind of took off over the last 10 years. And I think we're right at the point where people can make some really exciting steps into here. If I was going into my career, I would say drones is probably where I would still end up. But what I would say is a lot of the stuff like Valqari focused on the landing stations, right? The drones. A lot of that stuff has a couple of companies already fighting it out in the space, right? And so find an area that maybe is 2, 3 years in the future. Find where this industry is going, and then start building towards that. But trying to look backwards in this industry is almost impossible if you're going to try and carve anything out for yourself.
Fantastic. And do you have any advice on life for anyone who might be listening?
Yeah, follow what you think and not what people tell you to do. That seems to be what's gotten me the furthest.
Fantastic. And by the way, this is my final question. What's your take on work-life balance?
I don't think it's work life balance is for people that want to fit in the middle. If you want to run a company, don't even consider work life balance. It is not even remotely coming into your life as long as you're running anything. So I would say that work life balance is not for the faint of heart that want to go into
Yeah.
entrepreneurship.
Fantastic. And where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Check me out at LinkedIn, Ryan Walsh, Valqari. Otherwise, Valqari.com. Please reach out.
Fantastic. And again, thank you for joining the New World podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, Jumpo.
That's all for today's episode of the New World podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming new world. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated on the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicinix.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World podcast.